Mr. Howard, how are you?
Well, good morning.
For everybody to pop on. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
2 minutes to go.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
Looks like it's good time for the people in the Northeast to be visiting Florida and Arizona.
Yeah, we need to get out of here. It's about to be real, real cold.
Nasty.
Howard's always selling. I love the guy.
Go to South Florida because it's cold up here in Pensacola.
So, Howard, after today,
Yeah.
we don't get above freezing for the next 10 days.
Well, you could be in Minneapolis. It's 19 below right now.
Why would you want to be there, though?
It's 85 today here.
All right, Ronnie. You're in Parkland.
Yes, I'm in Parkland. Nice. It's beautiful out today. It's 85, 84. Sweet.
All right. So I have an interesting agenda for today, and talking about like home affordability, or just the word affordability. And I think it's been something that's been front and center in our lives, and even in the zeitgeist of politics, because everybody's talking about affordability. And when you think about affordability, you know I know we're all in real estate, but what comes to mind when you say the word affordability for most people, do you think?
Home costs, closing costs, taxes, insurance.
That's the real estate version, yes. But I think affordability is kind of transcended beyond housing affordability. And I think before it was utilities, insurance, it was food, right? Food was top on the affordability list politically, probably in 2024, food prices. Now I notice the shift. And from my research, it looks like housing affordability is an elevated issue in the urban and the suburban areas more than the rural parts of the country. And I think it's because of reasons that we are all very familiar with, that home prices have escalated, interest rates haven't declined to the levels that we've seen them at before. And in certain markets, insurance costs have kind of gone through the roof. So this all brings a housing affordability issue front and center. And I look at right next to where I am here in New Jersey, the New York City mayoral race, which was primarily driven by affordability living in the city, and affordability living in the city was mostly rent and housing costs. Okay, and I think that's what the campaign was built on, and I think he won quite handily on those issues. There's something called the Housing Affordability Index, which I'm going to go into a little bit later. And just out of curiosity, with all of our new markets, I looked at where do we sit in terms of affordable, unaffordable, and those areas. And I want to have a conversation about that. And I think it's almost more important to look at what the trend is. So, those of you in Florida, have any of you seen any of your costs coming down besides the interest rates?
Not in the panhandle.
Not in the panhandle.
We've been pretty flat for about 18 to 24 months. Pretty
So
steady.
tax, so taxes are steady, and insurance costs have kind of are at the peak level.
Taxes have probably gone up a little bit. In some ways, in the last 6 months, insurance has started to come down due to certain legislations, but that's going to take some time to really feel the impact. But over the last 2 years, I would say insurance is up overall, but it's starting to come down a little bit.
Because we had a buyer event in Boynton, and either Frank or Michael or Lisa invited an insurance agent to speak there. And I was very pleased to see that insurance rates, for his perspective, when he's shopping policies, it wasn't to minimize the increase from 10 to 25 or 30%. It was actually, at this point, he's finding that he's able to save more people money by shopping policies than minimize the increases, which was incredibly encouraging. Since, I mean, how high could they go, Jason, right?
Don't say that. I'm sure they could go a lot higher than they are.
What is insurance premium for your average home price? At about 500, Jason?
About about,
600,
about 350, 400 ish.
400? What's the insurance on something like that?
It really depends on the year. So I mean, if we're talking brand new construction, I can find a policy anywhere between 900 and $1,200. If it's pretty much over 5 years old, maybe 10, you're talking you might get 2,400. Any more than that, 35 would be where you're starting. It just really depends. And then of course, if you have to be close to a flood zone, AE might be $1,200 or $1,600 more than that. If you're really close to the water, I've seen flood insurance in upwards of 15,000.
Yeah, flood. It,
Okay.
it it's subjective, but it's about like 1.6% on average of a purchase price, something like that.
So I know in my home state of New Jersey, probably the premium differential between a new home and an old home, probably 30%. So maybe you're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 if it's an older home. Very minimal, which in Florida, and some other states, that's significant.
You could see a 200% difference between a 2025 build and a 1990s build.
Big
I
swing.
mean,
And it
and
depends on events too for us, like if we've had like an event like a hurricane, um, it changes the what we're looking at for effective age if there was an event and there wasn't a roof change or insurance claims. We have to disclose that now too if we have an insurance claim. So it's again, it's subjective, but I have seen a lot of legislation, RPAC, us advocating for changes and reduction in homeowners insurance, and a lot of folks got out of the game when we had the big events, and now we're seeing new providers and new, opportunities for competition in the insurance market. So that is kind of stabilizing some of the prices.
I want to talk about, and maybe this is something that we should even write down. It's so basic that you might even forget it. But what impacts home affordability are home prices, interest rates, taxes, and insurance. And there's one piece that I think a lot of us miss when we talk about home affordability. Does anybody want to guess what that last piece is?
Supply demand.
Good guess, but no.
Okay.
Ongoing
I mean, say if
maintenance,
we're in COVID and demand is high, the price is skyrocketed. That's where I was going. So
ongoing maintenance and repairs.
Maintenance, yeah, condition maybe.
That probably is part of it, but what the piece that I think we all miss, utilities and energy, those are both components. But I think the biggest component is what are our wages, right? If our wages are going up at the same level as prices are going, or the same level as home payments, then affordability would be stable. Does that make sense?
like
And I,
inflation and all the key components to it.
Right. So I think since 2020, I think most people who still have jobs have probably seen some pretty significant wage increases during that period of time. And, being an employer, I see wage pressure, hiring people, maintaining people. And that bodes well for affordability on homes. Okay. And I don't think, people don't generally talk about the good news as much as they talk about the bad news, right? So the good news is that prices have been a lot more stable in many of our markets. The good news is that, January versus January a year ago, it's roughly 1.25% decline in the average interest rate. So it went from about 7.25% to 6. So that's a pretty big affordability push. Um, you know, Insurance in Florida, it seems like it's peaked, or it's maybe even backing off instead of continuing to increase. And I think in Southeast Florida, that that mix of factors had pushed people from living in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County to moving further north in the state from an affordability perspective. And it was probably a survival mechanism. A lot of people in Southeast Florida kind of moving up the coast. Housing affordability in terms of what is generally accepted to be um, good for the country. And I do think that, in COVID, everybody wanted to have nurses and doctors, right? Because that was critical for, our sanity, our peace of mind, and staying alive. Now, the big conversation is talking about housing, right? It's probably one of the top three subjects for most people, right? Housing affordability. Where can I live? I can't afford to buy. Who can control that narrative? Who can control that narrative? We
I'm
can.
guessing you're not going to say the news is one of them.
Well, I mean, I think we can control the narrative when we have conversations, right? I mean, the news always sells sizzle, and you don't see, generally speaking, on the news or on social media, things that are boring and good. You see things that are dramatic, like there's a big train crash, or a market's imploding, or somebody's going to prison, right? Those are dramatic
Fear
things.
sells headlines, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Sorry.
No, correct. But we are the largest trade association in the country. And not only do we have, a financial obligation to ourselves and our families, but we have a moral obligation to the people that we claim to serve and that we should be serving. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that everybody realizes, unless, there hasn't been a refinance frenzy, there hasn't been a big spark that cut rates down from, 7.5 to 6, like in a short period of time. So it's really not in the public domain. People aren't talking about, wow, interest rates are great, but interest rates have moderated and they've come down, and that helps affordability. Um, and the only way that we have an impact is by communicating to our sphere and our clients. And I don't use the term past clients because we don't abandon our clients, but our clients also know a lot of people that we could help. In many cases, it's the younger generation. I want to pull up a stat. So, 60% of existing single family homes are owned by individuals 60 years or older. 60%. And I want to say 2/3 of homes have 50% equity or no mortgage on them. Okay, and a little bit over a third have zero mortgage. So there's a lot of things going out there that we need to have conversations about. And if somebody has a mortgage that is free, or a home that's free of any mortgage, what obstacle is by definition disappeared? Anybody?
Your
Well, the
tax
interest rate
write-off.
because you
Interest
have a
deduction.
mortgage.
Well, no, like
Yeah.
a lot of people in our mind aren't moving because we tell ourselves that they have, 2.5, 3, 4% mortgages. Why would they want to move if they're leaving? Okay. Well, a full, 30+% don't have any debt, right? So presumably if they sold, they'd probably buy something cash. So that really has no impact on them, correct?
True.
And if you bought before interest rates go, if you bought your next house before interest rates went down, you could probably get a better deal, and it has zero impact on you when you're making that decision. Why do you think, does anybody ever think about or find a way to communicate to your sphere of influence, your database, your clients, why home ownership is top of mind and in the public interest, other than, we have a lobby and we want to make sure home ownership goes. But you know why home ownership is good for, the country and the economy and almost in communities?
Because when people purchase homes, they need to go to Lowe's and Home Depot, and they need utilities, so they deal with maybe the local oil guy or the gas company. Um, so owning a home affects so many other industries.
It stimulates a lot of industries. And another piece, and that was Bobby, right?
Yep. Yep.
And Bobby, uh, it also builds more stable communities, right? When you have more home ownership, crime rates are lower, government assistance is lower,
Hello.
people are
I was
healthier.
calling because it says that my bill couldn't be processed again. So I want to get all my bills paid. I appreciate it. Take care.
Mute.
All this.
There we go.
Well, I think besides all of the other personal issues with or personal stuff that you gain with personal wealth, I mean, if you think about it and to tap on something that was in the news that they're trying to eliminate these large capital investment firms from owning single family homes. When they do that, it affects the overall price points of certain communities and certain neighborhoods. The fact is, if it's all owned internally, because most worst case, like, homeowners own maybe 2 to 3 homes, at any given time as far as in the community, but it doesn't affect the valuations. It keeps prices low. It builds economic stability. It builds economic growth. And honestly, everything is housed within the individual community. Your taxes are based on what your local, county commissioners and mayors and that's all based locally. If it has to be done on a national or state level, your prices are going to go up.
In the majority of the markets that we're in, do you think that the median household income can afford to buy the median priced home in their community? Very interesting question.
Depending on how you pull the stats, I'll say in the Panhandle, no.
Okay, we have one guess for no. Anybody else want to wager a guess? Looks like Ivy's going to give us an answer. Julie says not on the single. Well, Julie, we look at household income. Ivy, you unmuted? All right. So in most areas, it's between 80 and 140, 80 to 140 with 100, meaning that the average income can buy the median priced home, which to me tells me that we have a false narrative in the media because most households can afford to buy the median income. So in other words, in Miami Metro, which is Broward, Palm Beach, and Dade counties, probably one of the weaker. It's 20% below. There's a 20% gap. I want to say St. Louis, it's probably over a 40% positive, which means homeownership is incredibly affordable in certain markets. And I just don't think that, we look at this from a global perspective. And I also think, we all have our business goals that we created on January 1 that we wanted to stick to these habits. However, I think that we need to take a deeper look and say that we not only have a financial incentive, but we have a moral obligation to have these conversations where people can make the right decisions for themselves. And if you don't have enough conversation, sometimes you tend to subconsciously lead people out of your own financial need to do decisions that aren't in their best interest. And I, for one, can tell you when that usually happens, it usually doesn't end up well. Okay. And so housing affordability is not, in Manhattan, it's very dramatic. Okay. Maybe in the city of Miami, it's highly unaffordable. But in most areas, based upon the income that the people who reside there have, housing is affordable, somewhat affordable, or extremely affordable based upon, the areas that we're in. Jason, you mentioned about institutions, right? I did a little bit of research on that because that was kind of put out there. If you think about what the politicians have put out there as evidence for housing being top of mind, a couple of things come to mind. We heard about the 50-year mortgage, right? We heard about Donald Trump trying to fire people to get lower interest rates at the Fed. We've heard about $200 billion of buying mortgage-backed securities. Did anybody hear that?
I did.
Do you know?
It's probably the one thing I somewhat agree with, but it's the way the bill's written.
Tell the audience what do you understand that to be, Jason? Is that a workaround in any way or around regulatory requirements, in your opinion?
No, because I mean, okay, if you understand how the stock market works, the reality is when we had COVID or we had any other natural disaster, what the federal government will do, and this is Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, is they'll order the Treasury to effectively buy mortgage-backed securities. Well, when this Fed was coming out of it when they were trying to get rid of inflation, the first thing they said in the first interest rate drop or the first interest rate increase was, we're going to start to curb our balance sheet. Well, they had $8 trillion in mortgage-backed securities. What they were doing was when one sold, they bought another one. One sold, they bought another one. They kept about the same level. They've let that taper down, which is what's driven rates up because it has capitalistic money into it. That's a good thing for the economy, but it doesn't do anything for interest rates. And because interest rates have been held where they're at, it's it's kind of putting a stipend on between job growth and a few other factors in GDP. Well, if they start buying mortgage-backed securities again, it's going to drive rates a little bit lower, allow the economy to boom on its own. And the theory is that if you do enough of it and then curb it slower on the balance sheet, but hold rates where they're at or even drop the rates, it's going to allow the economy to self-sufficient. That's the theory. I think it's right because you have to do something in the stifling. You can't increase job growth and you can't drive rates down without doing something else.
And Jason, I think the piece to the puzzle that's different is the open market operations. I believe the Treasury is under the Federal Reserve's control in terms of whether they buy or sell or they build up these assets based upon their independent perception of what's good for the economy. And I think what Trump is looking to do is direct these government owned entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, instead of selling them off into the private markets. He's saying all the money that they have, he wants them to double down and buy mortgage-backed securities, which is a way of getting around his dispute with our Federal Reserve
Sure.
chairman.
Well, and I think, well,
Um,
the Treasury and the Federal Reserve are two different areas where the Federal Reserve is independent and sets economic policy. The Treasury is effectively a big warehouse of money and they can decide how they want to spend money in different areas. So, but yes, yeah, he's basically trying to direct them to get around the Fed's decision to do something or not. And it'll probably be in the next Fed. Doesn't matter who he nominates in May. That may or may not be the same case, but that's why he's elected for, I don't know, what is it, 8 years in individual terms. If the Treasury buys a lot of this stuff on the market side so they don't sell it back to the private sector, it will drive rates down. But usually they do that in an economic disaster, financial crisis, or what. It's another tool, but $200 billion is a smidgen in what's on their balance sheet. That's why I say I think it's effective. Uh, it might be an effective tool to use in the stagnant economy right now.
I kind of look at it as when the gas prices are high and they release the strategic reserve, it only goes
Yep.
so far, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it might have an impact for a couple of days, but it goes to show how affordability is in the political spectrum because it's in the public spectrum, right? Everybody's talking about affordability. We moved from how much do a dozen eggs cost, right, to now housing affordability, right? I think 2024 was about, food inflation and that affordability. Now we've moved to um, housing affordability. Institutional investors, and I was surprised that I couldn't get a firm number, but it's like 0.5% to 3% nationally, which is probably not enough to move the needle. However, in certain markets, it can be significantly in excess of 10%. That would be Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas, Orlando, Las Vegas. And ironically, the city of Newark has a tremendous amount of institutional investors going into the city, not into the county, but for some reason, the city of Newark hit the spotlight. That's Newark, New Jersey. So I think kind of going through all these numbers, which I think we need to know more so than just, hey, how many listings and what's the list to sale price and how much is your home worth and what can you afford? We need to have more of these macro data points to discuss. Does anybody know if new single family homes is keeping up with the population? Does anybody know what those numbers are?
What are we, 6 million is short right now? 5 million? I saw one that says 5, one that said
5
6.
million, yeah.
And how about like on an annual basis? Are we going in the right direction or backwards?
We're losing about what is it, 175,000 a year right now?
So from what I could see, there's 1.2 to 1.3 million household formations in the country, and I think these are things that we should understand and maybe even look at what the demographics are in our area. New housing starts, new homes completed last year, which are subject to revisions. Anybody want to guess what that number was?
900?
You're very good, 875,000.
At least the number I looked up wasn't wrong.
Okay, so there's another component to that which I didn't realize until I dug a little bit deeper, which is the obsolete and demolished and damaged homes from natural disasters, obsolescence, and just demolition. Anyone want to guess what that number is?
150. I'll throw a number out there. I don't know that.
300,000.
Okay.
So that makes the increase only 575,000 net on a
Is that
1.2.
part of the new starts, that 300,000?
No. I mean, some of the new starts are homes that were demolished, but they're counted in the 875.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay,
But
yeah. So
right, so there's really only 575 that are being built. So where does, like, how do we reconcile this?
build faster.
Build faster.
Call DR Horton.
Well, and some of the builders are putting the pedal on construction, not throttling down to increase it. I think the solution is in a couple of things, and I dug deep on this, but who knows what an ADU is? All right.
Additional dwelling unit or
unit.
yeah,
Accessory dwelling unit.
accessory dwelling unit. Yes.
Yep. All right. And for years, like this just was not something that was practical. And I don't know if in many states, like there's been like state mandates in terms of allowing people to put accessory dwelling units up that override local rules and regulations. But that's something that was done to counter this. I don't know, Kathy, do you have any color on this in terms of like NAR's input or if there's been any significant statewide legislation that New Jersey was modeling after or so forth?
Well, I do know that Princeton in New Jersey does have an accessory dwelling unit code, and we are looking at New Jersey as anyway. I can't say for NAR right now, but for New Jersey, we are also looking at what Massachusetts, Maine, Washington is doing to see how this is all going to pan out. Some of these states have already started looking at getting rid of the single family
Zoning.
Yeah, zoning.
Okay. And here's another.
Hey, Rob, in Newark, New Jersey, there's actually an ordinance allowing in the zoning code for ADUs.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I think that's going to be the new trend. I don't know if anybody can keep up with the comments because it looks like there's some pretty good comments coming through. And Juanine, did you have a question? You had your hand raised before?
Actually, it wasn't a question. It was a comment way back
Okay.
about what was a factor in helping our clients see about buying and interest rates and affordability and all that. I have found, because I put myself in my client's shoes, first of all, a lot of people are not, first of all, savvy enough to like invest in, say, the stock market or whatever. But one thing that reigns true is real estate, land, whatever, it never goes away. It will always be there. It won't crash. So buying your own home gives you a sense of investment. And that's something that you can have, your children can, you can pass it to your children, a generational home. I just saw a comment about that. So that could be a factor into the community or neighborhood type thing.
No, um, I think that's, something that transcends affordability in terms of, what's your financial planning and your legacy, right? You're going to be one of those people that have homes that are owned outright and can decide, I mean, Howard's talked several times about, paying it forward while you're still alive, letting your kids enjoy it before they inherit it. Another possible solution that I see, and I've seen the tide turn favorably towards it, which is manufactured housing. Okay. Has anybody, like, if you were asking me 10 years ago, manufactured housing, I'd be like, trailer park. But I've seen some manufactured homes that can rival custom homes.
They
And
become huge in Arizona, with farmland USDA loans out here. You have some new manufactured in the 500s out here.
they can forget about a double wide. They could put them together in 3 or 4 pieces to make it a pretty significant home. And I hate to say it, but generally speaking, the quality is superior to stick built because they're built in controlled environments.
Yeah.
Okay. And I learned this now. This would be like we talked about subtracting the 300 demolitions and damage. There's apparently about 95 to 110,000 manufactured homes that are deployed annually. And believe it or not, there is a regulation outstanding that's tremendously limiting the growth of this, which I discovered from my research today or yesterday. Does anybody know what kind of archaic rule there is for manufactured homes that probably puts a big damper on it?
So it's the engineer's foundation report.
In order to get mortgage, you have to
affidavit.
have a foundation and land.
You have to have, and you cannot lease the land. You have to own the land. Yeah, correct.
So
Yeah.
those are financing components, but there is a regulation. Let me make sure I
Be in
get this
areas where
correctly.
there's no natural disasters, right?
Nope. There's a regulation that manufactured homes have to have a permanent steel frame chassis ready in case it gets moved. Okay, from 50 plus years ago when a lot of these manufactured homes were in effect moved. Now they're not even movable because they're 3 and 4 wide. But this regulation has been for over 50 years, adding probably 10% or more to the cost of homes where they have to be able to be lifted up and moved, be constructed to that level. And well over 95 of manufactured homes in 2025 are permanent and never going to be moved. Now, just moving this regulation would probably increase the market by anywhere from 50 to 400%. It could go from 100,000 units to minimize the deficit to as much as 500,000 in the next 10 years. And is there anyone that's seen like really amazing manufactured homes? Because I have in Westfield. I mean, you would not even know that they're manufactured. They look like they're custom.
I just listed one, and it is amazing.
We
Right.
have them in Arizona all over the place. You walk in and you're blown away that it's a manufactured home.
Yeah, yeah.
There's ranches out here that put them out. I know I've sold them. We've done them. We put them all over there. They're absolutely incredible. Between fireplaces, 3,300 square foot manufactured homes with full steel frames. We do the affidavit of a fixture and affix them to it so they can never be moved. It's an incredible process to see how they are, and they're coming with warranties that like new home builds are doing. They're doing 30-year warranties on the roof, frame warranty 15-year. It's absolutely an option for more buyers these days out here.
And more lenders are figuring out different products they can use so that people can actually borrow money if they're on leased land. So it's definitely improved, especially here. I don't know the rest of the country. I have my license in Missouri, and they don't really have very many, but here
Well,
it's a big deal, and I think it's because of pricing.
here in Florida, you have to vacate during a hurricane if your manufactured home is not deemed stable. I mean, it is recommended to vacate, but there are some in mainland that are sustainable with the weight on the roof. I forgot what that's called, but there's a double roofing that would put weight on the home. And those ones you can stay in during
Hurricane
We
disaster.
have Cavco introduced a product out here that they said was actually based out of Florida, where it comes with a full hurricane force property, and it actually has remove or electric shutters for all the windows. The roof is guaranteed up to a Category 3 hurricane, and we do it out here for what we call haboobs or a dust storm out here. And even insurance wise, you have to have that type of home for it.
Oh, nice.
I
So,
wonder
so
what's the difference between a manufactured home and a modular home?
I can tell you.
Okay.
A modular home is built basically in a factory. It's 90-degree square. It's very square. And it's brought out on a flatbed, usually in several pieces. They can erect the entire perimeter of the home in one day. And then they finish the inside just like a general stick-built home, where a manufactured home is like a double wide, single wide. It's brought out on wheels, tongue, chassis, and then it's placed on the lot. It's already finished on the inside.
so give me the main distinction between the two.
One of them is built in a factory and it never had wheels. It's brought out on a flatbed, uh, like a semi, and erected on the lot, but it's the main pieces. Several pieces are actually put together in, like you said, a controlled environment where the manufactured home actually is brought out to wherever it's going to be placed with tongue, wheels, axle, and it's already finished unless it's a double wide, and then they have to put it together, the two halves.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
So as we talk to our clients and our sphere, um, there are people out there still, and maybe even some of us that are like, oh, when's the bottom going to fall out of this market? We've seen the prices go up so much, but even in the most vulnerable areas, with few exceptions, and I would use maybe condos, older condos in Florida as a rare exception to this rule. But even if the market's soft, you're not seeing a huge price decline because there's still demographic demands that are supporting us through a lot of the economic changes. And knowing the fact that you take 875, call it 900, add 100,000 manufactured homes that are deployed every year, that gets us up to 1 million. Take 300,000 away, that's 700,000, and there's 1.2 to 1.3 million dollar new home formations annually. So there's probably at least a 3 to 600,000 unit shortage annually. Okay, so it's like playing musical chairs. The chair becomes more valuable when there's less alternatives. And you might say, well, Rob, that doesn't make sense. Where are the people living now? Who knows where are those people living now? The people who don't get a chair.
Well, if
Are
they're
they in
younger, they're probably in mom and dad's basement.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
some of
living with
them.
family.
But you know what? You know what? Building has been stronger, multifamily, right? So they want to, the um, REITs, or maybe even they would be institutional, non-single family. Around me here, there's a tremendous amount of construction on brownfields, former warehouse and manufacturing sites, all converted to high density, mixed use, housing alternatives. Not unlike the ones where I talked about the new homeowner in Orlando, where this couple was paying almost $3,000 or $4,000 a month for a luxury one bedroom apartment, which it took up all their savings in addition to their car payments. So um, I don't know what happens. It seems to me that, and I know Howard, one time we were driving around, there's a lot of rental units being built out in Scottsdale, right?
Yes.
Do you see that flow? Do you see that ebbing and flowing where there may be a huge shortage in tenants as home ownership prevails, or
Well, I don't know if you're talking about the build to rent communities.
exactly?
Okay, yeah. We estimate that there's 30 to 35,000 build to rent homes just in the greater Maricopa County area. And these are entire subdivisions that were built from day one to be a rental. And their target market is the person that needs to grow out of an apartment because of children and dogs and things like that, and they just want to get into a home that might have a dog door and a little park and some amenities to go with it. But imagine 35,000 of these things. It's incredible.
Right.
They'll take a 6 and 8 acre parcel and pack, I don't know, Wilson, what do you think, 150 units in it? I mean,
Yeah,
to
if
me,
not
they
more.
look like the tenement of the future. But if they
They're
maintain
building
well,
master communities for them.
oh
It
yeah,
is
yeah.
100% almost its own community. Like in Marana, we have Gladden Farms that is an estimated 8,500 new homes in the next year to 2 years. The rental community that is one exit down the freeway is estimated to put 450 rental homes up in the next 6 months. It's incredible what they're doing with these rental, and they're usually low end rentals with high end prices. It's insane what they're doing with the rental communities.
But Howard, aren't there also a lot of mid and high rises that are being built, rental communities, not condos?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean,
That that that, that probably is a 5 to 10x of the single family number that you talked about.
yes, it is. Yeah.
Um,
And they're
so
going through an overpopulation or overbuilt process right now where building into the performa of this high-rise apartment, they don't anticipate actually being full until maybe 2027. So it takes that much time because of the competition. I mean, there's tens of thousands of units that have been built in anticipation of growth.
right.
Yeah.
So my goal for this meeting today, Howard, and everybody here, is just to give you some ammunition to have meaningful conversations with your clients, the friends and family of your clients, and the people that are in your sphere, so they can have all the right information. And from a layperson's perspective, you look at the stock market keeps going up and up and up, and they're like, well, that's going to pop at some point, right? You look at the housing market, you say, hey, from 2020, the COVID days till now, I'm just going to go around. Kathy Moore, and how much is housing in your area up from 2020, from before COVID to today?
At least 25%.
In total, or probably significantly more than that, no? In that
Well, if
5-year
you're
window?
going back to 2020, you're talking maybe more like 40% higher.
Okay. And Jason, how about in the Panhandle?
Oh, probably close to 60. I think one year we had a 31% increase in certain areas and neighborhoods. I bet it's 50 or 60%.
Beth, how about in the areas that you work? You know, if you look at a same home sale from 2019 to now.
I know my home values increased almost 3 times since I bought in 2012, and I refied right at the beginning of COVID, and it's still more. It's probably 30% higher than that. So I'm just basing on those numbers.
I just Googled it because I wasn't sure. It went up 50% between 2020 and 2022, but now it's down a little bit it's still up from 2020, but it's down. So overall, about 35%.
Okay, and how about best deal in Arizona? What would your guess be?
I got distracted, so can you repeat the question?
Your typical home from 2019 till today, like what's the change in value as a percentage?
Oh, as a percentage, it's pretty big. I mean, I can tell you personally that it's pretty big. So let's see if I just look at that last one.
So Wilson's saying 67% in Tucson.
Or probably somewhere between 45 and 50% in Metro Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah. 2019 to now is 67% for Pima County.
So
63.
So conventional wisdom for some people, hey, you know, Beth, let me wait until the foreclosures come back, but I don't see it. I mean, the things that drove that behavior back in 2008 to 11 was bad lending. Now, nobody's going to get foreclosed when they've had, 35 to 67% of additional equity. And does anybody remember back in the 2006 to 9 era, or maybe 2006 to 8 era, what everybody did with their home? Everybody was, at least a lot of my market, I saw people using it as a piggy bank, taking home equity on it, right? I don't see that behavior now. I don't know. Does anybody see that in your local market where everybody's pulling equity out from their home?
Yeah, and actually some of the lenders were really big on that. Like Wells Fargo had the home asset management account to where, it was 80-20 and the 20% was a home equity line. And every month when you paid down your first, that amount of equity was available in your second. It just kept rolling to the second, kept you right at 100%. It's pretty crazy. So there were a lot more foreclosures there. They didn't have anything to lose if they walked away, except for their credit score.
But that doesn't exist now. So I know that there's a percentage of people that are in our sphere that are part of our client base that are thinking that this went up so much that it's probably going to crash. And I think that's a false narrative. I think that, if the conversation's appropriate, we need to be prepared to have those conversations, and having these statistics are going to be incredibly helpful. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of show a couple of metros here. Let me just find this.
Well, while you're doing that, one of the things that I do talk to people about is, a lot of people who are going to foreclosure do not or have not had the finances to maintain the home, even if they have a lot of equity. And there are a lot of lenders that are still not wanting to do a bailout loan if somebody gets behind. So I just tell people, look for stuff that needs some cosmetic updates because you can make a lot of money on ugly. You get in there and you do, some fresh paint, replace some flooring, and then you're going to see that equity climb pretty quickly because regardless of what they're supposed to do, emotion matters. The emotional appeal matters not only to buyers, but it does matter if you have a really clean, well put together home. It does affect the appraiser's opinion of value. So it does work. I've done it several times personally, and so that's usually from an emotional standpoint, that's been a pretty effective comeback.
Here's some of our service areas: New York, Miami, Philadelphia, Orlando Metro, Dallas, and Phoenix. All top 25 least affordable, with New York top 5 and Miami top 10. Now, I would say, New York City itself and Miami itself, they're probably on the scorching level of unaffordability, but the metros have areas and pockets that are not as restrictive. St. Louis, Jacksonville, Pensacola. Jason, you agree that Pensacola is generally affordable to the average family there, or probably not?
Yes, because most of we have like 9 military bases within a stone throw. So the amount of influx we get from out of state buyers, what you're saying is from New York. Well, you can't afford New York. You come down here and you're spending a third of what you would normally there. So yes, it would be very affordable if you compare it that way.
So some of these areas, like Pittsburgh, I think St. Louis was here. St. Louis was a 124, now is a 116. Pittsburgh was 145, now is a 140. So they've slowly been increasing back up. Okay, from a low of 135 to 140 in Pittsburgh, St. Louis, a low of 112 to 116. The direction is in a positive way. The least affordable metros, if we look at New York, went from 85 in 2019 to 74 in 2025. Miami's at from 95 to 80. Dallas is from 125 to 102. Orlando is down 19 points. So not everything moves the same direction. And
Hey, Rob, what does that number refer to?
so the number means 100 is the average household income can afford to buy the median home in the market.
Okay.
And then it gets adjusted up or down. So 140 is incredibly strong, and 80 is incredibly weak, meaning that, obviously, if there's 100%, means the median can afford the median home. And
so you need 100% of the income you can afford to 80% of the median home.
So yeah,
80.
so if it's a number like San Diego or Miami, yes, so you are 20% short to be able to buy a home.
Median home, yeah.
A median home, correct. And then in I want to say, where were you there in St. Louis? So St. Louis was the median income can afford to buy the median home and have 16% surplus.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are times when these numbers get to be elevated up from a dramatic level, but those are generally crisis-driven events, right? So in 2009 through 2012, these numbers were like 140 to 160 or 170 because people were buying short sales, and those that did have income, because the median only looks at, you'd have to have 50% of the population not working for that median to drop. So in those areas, affordability was, incredible, but the sentiment wasn't positive, which also limited price inflation and normalizing to, 120 to 140, which is where the government wants to see it. So the takeaway from here is, other than, showing people, hey, here's the 3 properties that meet your needs, here's how to negotiate. We're going to talk on a macro level in terms of affordability, giving people some confidence that, the bottom is not likely to fall out of this market. And ironically, a lot of people can afford to buy despite the narrative that you see on social media and traditional media, right? I mean, even in the Miami metro, it's 80%. Maybe in Miami, it's 45%. But most of our business is done in the metro, and not in the individual city. So I don't know. I hope this is helpful for you, opening up conversations, talking to people who have a reason to rely upon us for our information, right? I did give Dallas numbers, and those were on the unaffordable side. I'll run those off to you, but Dallas was 102, down from 125. So Dallas was typically one of your more affordable markets, probably 15 or 20 years ago. Any, Ivy, are you able to comment on that?
What we're seeing is almost every buyer is asking for 15 to 20,000 in concessions to help them with closing costs and offset, maybe buy down their interest rate. And, prices went up so much that sellers can afford to do it. So we're seeing that in almost all of our offers, anywhere between 3 to 7 or 750,000.
Right.
And
so
buyers are putting down sometimes only 3%. So I think you're right. Buyers don't have the money. They don't have cash today. So it's a good way to help them.
Right. So Ivy, I'm going to make a comment, which is like the most obvious comment, but when you're a renter, it's hard to build wealth. It's hard to save money because you're at the mercy of that rental cycle, right? You're feeding the beast, right? When you buy, then you start to build equity. You have home equity that you can tap into. There's just a world of difference that opens up. So, Glenn Baker uses this saying with his team, you have to stop the clock, right? Or you have to educate them on the cow, the cost of waiting, right? Those are two ends of the same spectrum. Waiting has a cost, right? There's a cost associated with indecisiveness. Okay. And that cost generally far exceeds any type of speculative move you might see or anticipate happening in the market. And I had one other thing I wanted to mention based upon what you said. It eluded me, but we have a moral obligation to have this conversation, and it's not to convince people to buy; it's to educate them on what's possible for them. Right? They deserve to know that. If we're the person that they would say, if I have a question about real estate, I'm going to you. Then you have an obligation not to be quiet. You have an obligation not to wait for them to pick up the phone or to send you an email. You have an obligation to have an open conversation about what's happening in the market, right? And not only is it a sound investment, but it's housing, it's wealth. Let me just take a look at any other questions before we wrap it up. We got 1 minute. I'm going to just check the chat.
Yeah, this is Tony here. I think that because I get that question there asked every day, every time I meet people, how is the market, And I think that if we have the stats, if we have the information to show them, for example, here in Broward County, when I am in Fort Lauderdale, I have the paper here in my hand there of the 5 counties that my board is connected together. And I see that compared to last year, the market is flat. And the people think that the market went down. No, it didn't go down, it's flat. It didn't go up, it didn't go down. And they can see the numbers for the single family homes. Certainly for the condo market here has changed, a little bit, but it's just a matter of the median price last year here in Broward County. The condos went down less than 4%, 3.9. So I think it's the media sometime or listen to something that it's not true, and the things that they bubble to a big bubble there. But if you show them the stats and you are not knowledgeable of the stats, then you can let them know. You can show them. I think that the affordability part of it is that the market went up so much because of the inflation that we had here in Broward County. The family home from 20 to 2025, it went up 61.5%. The average price, and the median price went up 55.3 in 5 years. That's a lot. That is a lot. And unfortunately, the people, the monthly income, it didn't go up that much. And that's why we're having this problem that people cannot afford. And certainly, they're waiting for a market adjustment. They're waiting for a market adjustment. But I don't know if that adjustment will come. That I don't know.
And I think, Tony, when I listened to what you said a lot of them can't afford it, but it's really an individual picture, right? If you're below the 100% line where you can't afford to buy the house that you need, right? That's a personal thing. It doesn't matter if the affordability index is 120 or if the affordability index is 80, but you can afford it. Our mission, our moral obligation is to have those conversations and give people the information to make the right choices for themselves. I can tell you in my career, there's very, very few people that come back to say, I regret buying a house. Okay.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. My first house, I tell the people, was a handyman special, and I am not handy. So, you got to buy what you can and build on it. Yes, you're right. You're right there.
Howard?
Yeah,
Howard will have the last word.
Mike Ferry had the best comment ever for the question of how's the market. His comment, he says, I always answer, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
But I tell you something about it. And so instead of launching off into, well, it's all driven by neighborhoods and blah, 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 what can I tell you about it? It's unbelievable.
Right.
Best comment ever, best answer.
And Howard, most of us love what we do, so that that enthusiasm, we owe it to share that with our clients. So have a productive weekend, everybody. I hope that you now can use the term affordability from a positive perspective when you talk to your clients in your sphere.
Hey Rob, can I ask one question for our agents across the country? This is Brian Neugebauer, Scottsdale, Arizona. We talked a little bit about the rental community a little bit earlier and how in Arizona we have this mecca of full communities of 200-300 homes being built, 100% as rentals. We have also seen a big transition from apartments for those that do multi-family, if there's anybody that does that. But a lot of our apartments buildings have gone from like 20 and 30 and 40 unit apartment buildings over the last multiple years. They're all 300 to 400 unit buildings. Are you guys seeing that same trend in your markets?
Oh yes, here in Fort Lauderdale, we have a rental community every corner. Everybody's building to rent them out. I don't know why. Where all these people are gonna come? They are building like crazy here in Fort Lauderdale. And also I see in Miami, they're doing the same thing. They're building all these rental communities.
How about Dallas or St. Louis? Are we seeing that?
Yes.
So we're seeing the mega rentals. Okay.
Yes,
since land is at a premium, a lot of builders are building up, to get the biggest bang for their buck on the property. Yes, we're getting into high rises with hundreds of units.
And St. Louis, the Midwest, is also seeing the same trend. All right, everybody. I'll see you all next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Those of you in the cold spell here, stay warm. It's going to be cold for a while.
Yeah, stay inside. Don't move.
Take care.
Don't move.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.